I never imagined I would be telling this story, but recent events have shattered the life I once knew. My name is Daniel, and I'm 45 years old. For the past 21 years, I was married to my wife, Heidi, who is 42. Together, we built a life and raised 2 children, our daughter, Tabitha, who is 20, and our son, Dylan, who is 14. I believed we had a solid marriage, full of the usual ups and downs, but nothing that couldn't be weathered. Looking back, I see now how naive I was. I met Heidi during my final year of college when she worked at a local coffee shop. She had this warm, inviting smile and a laugh that could brighten even the darkest days. We fell hard for each other, dating for 2 years before getting married. Not long after our wedding, she became pregnant with Tabitha. We were overjoyed, embracing the excitement and challenges of young parenthood. 6 years later, Dylan was born, completing what I thought was our perfect little family. For the past decade, I worked as a senior project manager at a construction company, a position that required long hours and frequent site visits. It was demanding, but I took pride in providing for my family. I knew I wasn't as present at home as I should have been, but I believed Heidi understood the sacrifices I made for us. When Dylan entered middle school, Heidi decided to work part-time at a local bakery. She had always loved baking, and I supported her decision, even if it meant I had to shoulder more financial responsibility. Over the past couple of years, though, something changed between us. Our marriage grew distant, not just physically but emotionally as well. Our weekly date nights became a thing of the past. Conversations dwindled to nothing more than household logistics, and the warmth that once filled our home seemed to fade. I noticed Heidi withdrawing, but I chalked it up to life's natural ebbs and flows. I reassured myself that we'd find our way back to each other eventually. I should have paid more attention. 3 months ago, my old college friend Bruce moved back to our state for a job opportunity. Bruce and I had a long history, roommates in college, best man at my wedding, and despite living in different states for years, we always kept in touch. When he mentioned needing a temporary place to stay while house hunting, I welcomed him without hesitation. Bruce was always the charismatic one, the guy who could walk into any room and instantly become the center of attention. He had an easy way with people, effortlessly making them laugh and drawing them in. When he moved into our guest room for the week, he immediately charmed everyone, especially Heidi and Tabitha. Most nights, after I wrapped up my work calls, I would find them all in the living room, chatting and laughing like old friends. It warmed my heart to see my family enjoying his company. I started noticing small things, nothing alarming at first. Heidi seemed more energetic, making an extra effort with her appearance, dressing up more and cooking special meals. I assumed she was just being a good host. When Bruce found a place of his own about 20 minutes away and moved out, he remained a regular presence in our lives. He stopped by often, helped Heidi with errands, and stayed for dinner. Again, I thought nothing of it. He was my best friend after all. Then there were the late-night text messages. Heidi was constantly on her phone, smiling at her screen, but when I asked, she brushed it off, claiming she was catching up with old friends on Facebook. Instead of being suspicious, I felt guilty. Guilty for not being more present, for letting work take priority, for allowing her to seek happiness elsewhere. Then came the day that destroyed everything. I had left for work early that morning, rushing to an important client meeting. Halfway there, I realized I had forgotten some crucial documents at home, documents I needed for a contract signing. Frustrated, I turned around, intent on grabbing them quickly and heading back before anyone even noticed I was gone. As I stepped into the house, I heard laughter coming from the living room. Familiar voices, playful, teasing. A warmth spread through me at the thought of my wife and my best friend enjoying a light-hearted conversation. But as I turned the corner, my world collapsed. There on our sofa was Heidi, straddling Bruce, their lips locked in a heated embrace. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even notice me standing there at first. When they finally did, Bruce practically shoved Heidi off him and jumped to his feet, his face draining of color. He stammered out half-hearted apologies, insisting it wasn't what it looked like. But we all knew that was a lie. Coward that he was. He grabbed his keys and fled, unable to face the devastation he had caused. What came next was worse. Instead of breaking down in guilt or begging for forgiveness, Heidi turned on me. She yelled, accused me of neglecting her, blamed me for driving her into Bruce's arms. The woman I had loved for more than 2 decades, the mother of my children, stood before me with venom in her eyes, casting herself as the victim. That day, something inside me broke. In the days that followed, the betrayal only deepened. Tabitha, my own daughter, took her mother's side. She refused to acknowledge what Heidi had done, convinced that I was the one at fault for pushing her away. It was like losing 2 people at once, my wife and my daughter. But then came the ultimate twist of fate. Bruce, the man she had chosen over me, the friend I had trusted like a brother, turned around and betrayed them both. I don't know all the details, and I don't care to, but whatever illusion of love or loyalty they believed they had was shattered. And now it's just Dylan and me. My son, my boy. The one person who stood by me through it all. We are rebuilding our lives. Without them, it still hurts, and some days are worse than others. But for the first time in a long while, I feel a sense of clarity. The people who truly mattered never turned their backs on me. And as painful as this chapter has been, I know it's not the end of my story. I never imagined my life would take such a devastating turn. For over 2 decades, I believed I had built something strong, something unbreakable. But in just a matter of months, everything I thought I knew came crashing down, leaving only betrayal, heartbreak, and the painful task of rebuilding from the ashes. My wife, Heidi, and I had been together for 21 years, parents to 2 wonderful children. Our daughter, Tabitha, and our son, Dylan. Our love story had been simple and sweet. We met when I was in my final year of college, and she was working at a small coffee shop. There was an instant connection, a deep love that blossomed into marriage just 2 years later. The early years were beautiful, filled with laughter, the excitement of starting a family, and the warmth of shared dreams. When we had our first child, Tabitha, we were overjoyed, and when Dylan arrived 6 years later, it felt like our family was finally complete. As the years went by, I worked tirelessly to provide for them. Climbing the ranks in the construction industry, I became a senior project manager, a role that demanded long hours and frequent site visits. I poured everything into ensuring we had a comfortable life, believing that my dedication would be appreciated, that it was my way of showing love. Heidi, on the other hand, took up part-time work at a bakery, something she had always dreamed of doing. With more flexibility in her schedule, she was home when Dylan returned from school, managing the household while I focused on securing our future. Somewhere along the way, things changed between us. The intimacy faded. Conversations grew mechanical, limited to discussing schedules, bills, and household chores. I noticed Heidi withdrawing, dressing up more often, spending more time on her phone, but I ignored the signs. I told myself it was a phase, something we would work through like we always had. Then, Bruce reappeared in our lives. He had been my closest friend since college, my best man at our wedding, someone I trusted implicitly. When he moved to our state for a job and needed a temporary place to stay, I welcomed him into our home without hesitation. In hindsight, I was blind. I didn't see what was unfolding right in front of me. I thought nothing of how easily he integrated into our daily lives, how Heidi seemed happier when he was around, or how she suddenly put more effort into her appearance. I saw him as my friend, and I trusted my wife. One afternoon, everything shattered. I had to return home unexpectedly to retrieve some documents for a critical meeting, and when I stepped into the house, I was met with a sight that burned into my memory. Heidi, my wife of over 2 decades, was straddling Bruce on our couch, their hands tangled, their mouths fused in a moment of passion. They were so lost in each other that they didn't even notice me at first. When they did, Bruce scrambled away, stammering apologies, while Heidi just stared at me, caught but unrepentant. I don't remember much of what I said in those first moments. The shock was too great, the betrayal too deep. Bruce fled like the coward he was, but Heidi, she didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't break down in guilt or try to explain. Instead, she turned on me. She blamed me. She raged about how I had neglected her, how Bruce had made her feel wanted in a way I no longer did. She tried to paint herself as the victim, as if I had forced her into his arms by simply working hard to provide for our family. I told her I wanted a divorce. She laughed, called me dramatic, insisted it was just a kiss, that I was throwing away our marriage over a moment of weakness. But I knew better. I knew this wasn't the first time. The fallout was worse than I could have ever imagined. When our children learned the truth, their reactions cut even deeper. Tabitha, my daughter, the little girl I had held in my arms, read bedtime stories to, watched grow into a young woman, took her mother's side without hesitation. She accused me of being unfair, of failing to make Mom happy. She dismissed my pain as overreaction, as if 21 years of marriage could be reduced to a single mistake. She even suggested I should try to fix things, that it was my fault for not being present enough. Dylan, my son, saw things differently. He was furious. He told me he had noticed the changes, that he had seen the way Heidi acted around Bruce, the late-night whispers, the lingering glances, the way she always seemed to light up when he was around. He hadn't known how to tell me, hadn't wanted to believe it himself. Now, he wanted nothing to do with his mother. That night, I moved into the guest room. By morning, I had already contacted a divorce lawyer. Things only spiraled further. Heidi and Tabitha didn't just defend what had happened, they doubled down. They moved in with Bruce, my daughter, my own flesh and blood, left her home to live with the man who had destroyed our family. She told me I was bitter and childish, that I should be happy for her mother, that Bruce was more of a father figure to her than I had ever been. Dylan and I were left alone in an empty house, navigating the wreckage of our family. He struggled, his grades slipping, his once bright energy dimming. I did my best to be there for him, to show him that I wouldn't abandon him the way his mother and sister had. We cooked dinner together, talked more, and found solace in each other's presence. Then karma struck. Months later, Heidi called me, sobbing hysterically. Through her broken words, she revealed the unimaginable. She had walked in on Bruce and Tabitha, together, in the same way I had found her with him. The man she had thrown our marriage away for, the man she had chosen over me, had turned his attention to our daughter. He hadn't just betrayed me, he had betrayed her too. She begged for forgiveness. She told me she finally understood my pain, that she had been blind, that she had ruined everything. She wanted another chance to rebuild, to be a family again. But I had nothing left for her. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. Tabitha called next, defensive at first, then pleading. She insisted her relationship with Bruce was real, different from what he had with her mother. When I pointed out that he had probably told Heidi the same thing, she hung up on me. Bruce left town after everything collapsed. Good riddance. The divorce was finalized, and Dylan chose to stay with me. Heidi and Tabitha, forced to confront their own mistakes, moved into a small apartment. Their relationship fractured. They reached out, again and again, but I refused to let them drag me back into their chaos. I had spent enough time living in betrayal. Now, I was choosing to live in peace. Dylan and I are moving forward. His grades have improved. He's back to playing soccer, and I make sure I'm there at every game. I started dating again, slowly, cautiously. Sarah, a project coordinator I met through work, understands my hesitance, my need to take things one step at a time. She's met Dylan, and for the first time in a long time, I feel something close to hope. One day, I might fully forgive, but I will never forget. To anyone who has been through something similar, know this: betrayal does not define you. You are worth more than the people who have wronged you. You deserve better.